it's good to have you back in the studio. What's going on, man?
Yeah, we're back, man. It's springtime is here, and the the wave of springtime real estate is hitting.
Okay.
Man,
what
it's
does
coming.
that look like for you?
Busy.
Busy.
I'm glad we've got a team built out and systems around that because it's about to get. It has gotten crazy. So October, we've talked about this where rates jumped, activity dipped. First quarter was pretty slow across the board for the industry and for me specifically. The past probably 5 to 6 weeks saw it start to pick up a little bit, but really the past 2 weeks, it's just in my personal business. I don't have stats for the MLS or demand as a whole of Birmingham, but I mean I think I've gotten 6 or 7 new clients just in the past 2 weeks of just people ready to buy or people ready to sell, and it's springtime and it's coming. So.
And how are these people getting in contact with you?
Referrals. That's the best thing. Yeah, I've been try to be pretty strategic on just focusing on my people and taking care of them. And
so after every client, after every deal, I'm sure you give them like a care package. Like, here you go. This is what you give to the next 3 friends of yours that are looking to sell.
Yeah, it's about just building a relationship, and it's we had that on last week, and we talked about that just relationship and phone calls and being in front of people and the consistency, and that's really all it is just all past clients and all my favorite people are just taken care of, and I'm around them a bunch, and it's all genuine, right? It's not I've got to go swing by and drop off a Blake Shultz team pin, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
to get or we talked about the mailers and the snail mail and all that stuff, and I always wonder how effective that is anyways. I know in my own personal household, but at the same time, to give it credit, the gutter guard guys have been hammering me to the point where I'm finally like, probably the first 50 envelopes or little flyers I got from them just went straight in the trash. But I think 51 may be the sweet spot where I finally started looking at it. I'm actually reading it like, man, I am kind of tired of getting up on my roof and cleaning my gutters. So maybe, maybe consistency.
Hey, they've got it down. It's said in our business and across the board and just in marketing, 7 to 10 touches is when people really start paying attention.
It sticks in your brain.
Yeah. So, again, just around consistent. We talked about a lot of that last week with that.
Yeah, but the thing is about, at least from my perspective with a realtor or anybody in your industry, buying a home or selling a home, you don't really need it until you need it. And I know with our own personal experience, when we bought our house 5-6 years ago, golly, that time flies. Unfortunately, I didn't know you at the time, so we were like, okay, we want to buy in this area. We like it, but we don't know what we're doing. Turns out we knew a little more than we thought. We're just, obviously surfing Zillow and Trulia and the online things. And we may have already talked about this before, but we just, Katie had a distant friend, more like an acquaintance, a friend of a friend who did realty. And we were like, oh, well, let's call her. And she had never bought or sold in the area that we purchased our home. She was just kind of like, okay, I'll help you. And then, she did great. We ended up in the house that we wanted. She worked with us. Obviously at the time we were buying a home, it was crazy. I think at one time she was in the middle of a hair appointment. We were like, there's a house that just hit the market. We have to go see it. And she was there within like 20 minutes.
Yeah, curl is still in the hair.
Curl is still in the hair, everything. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. But I was surprised at some of the listings and stuff, and we probably already talked about this too. Some of the listings she showed us and stuff, I was like, well, we've already seen this. Anyways, so moving forward, I will definitely, this relationship that we have forged through this podcast, and we haven't actually worked together. That's
not yet.
Actually, not yet. But relationships are important, and so glad to have you in my inner circle.
Absolutely,
now.
absolutely, man. So this spring it's going to blow up, and it's going to be interesting because.
How do you think this spring will compare to? We're in 2023, so last year we were 2 years removed from the pandemic, more or less, or the height of the pandemic. How do you think this spring will compare to last spring?
I think it's going to jump up to be pretty competitive with what we saw then as well, meaning multiple offer situations, people waiving inspection.
And I know I've asked this question, and for anybody, maybe this is the first episode they've listened to, why is it that spring is the hotbed of realty action? Is that just you know, people are getting outside, it's warm, you know, serotonin levels are better, you know, people are just, why is that?
Yeah, that is part of it. I think school year has a lot to do with it as well. People wanting to make a move in the summer and not, you know, uproot kids if they're changing school systems or districts.
Yeah, you mentioned that. So
yeah, so I think just a combination of those things. But really, the past 2 years since, you know, 2020 until last October 22, it was springtime year round. I mean, it just stayed crazy. Rates jumped October, things cooled off a little bit. Buyer demand cooled off. Lack of inventory did not change. We still have a lack of inventory, but now rates are kind of more or less settling into a new normal, and buyers are realizing that. And so people who didn't have to buy last October or last fall are now saying, okay, well, I need to buy now, and rates aren't coming back down to 3%, so let's go. And so all the people who would just normally be ready to buy and sell today are paired up with people who delayed for 6 months.
And they're finally ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah, so we've got a increasing daily demand for houses while we still don't have much inventory.
So yeah, that's interesting. At least in my neighborhood, I see houses going on the market left and right. One house on the corner in particular, I feel like they just sold that house. 6 months later, there's another for sale sign in the yard.
Yeah.
And so who knows what that situation is, but can you speak to the lack of inventory? Is that a relatively new thing, or has demand just surpassed a regular inventory that we already had?
It has. Well, if you know, this kind of goes back to 15 years, 2008 to 2012, there were no homes being built, right? Because we were in a huge recession,
yeah.
Banks wouldn't give money. And so we've been in a lack of inventory since 2012.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
but it just hasn't been as extreme because builders just can't keep up. And then pandemic hit, and it kind of set it back even more because material was hard or impossible to get. Material prices skyrocketed, and so
for a decade, we've been in an inventory deficit.
Yeah, we
Wow.
have, which is why the market has quote unquote been so good for so long. And I've ridden that wave, and I haven't experienced a massive recession. It's coming at some point, or at least in a correction. I don't think a big recession is coming. But a correction is coming. We just saw 6 months of a correction, essentially, and probably more of that's coming in the next couple of years. If you just look at the history of real estate since data was kept in the 40s or 50s, it's cyclical. It goes up and it goes down, and it's just that is the progression. We've been up for a while, so eventually it's going to dip back down, and that's just part of it. So as an investor, I'm in it for the long haul. Right, I'm trying to buy stuff and hold it for a long time, so it'll go through those ups and downs, but I'm not real worried about it. It'll just stay right there and keep going for me. But as a home buyer, as an agent advising a buyer or a seller, it really breaks down to what their goals are. Right, is this a 2 to 3 year house for you, or is this a 10 to 15 year house for you? And that and based off that answer is going to be my advice for that person as an agent is going to change on how they write that offer. And
Do a lot of people have an answer for that question when they're looking for
most do.
like first-time home buyers?
First-time home buyers, like, hey, we're just, our budget's up to $300,000 in Birmingham. That's really not getting you a ton of house anymore.
Sure.
So that'll get you a starter home, 3-2 under 2,000 square feet. Well, you have 2 kids, and hey, it's you're hurting for space, and so people
who asked us that question would be like,
I don't know.
We may move next week. We may die in this house. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, so I'll give you an example of the crazy market we've entered, and this is the most extreme case. I've had one that was close to this 2 years ago in Homewood. This is the most extreme case I've been a part of. So I have some clients looking in Homewood, Red Mountain, Highland Park, Forest Park, that kind of area, and there was a house listed. This is actually over in Crestline Park, and it was listed for $660. Okay.
660.
It was a good house, and houses in the area are $1 million plus.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so we go through. We have a showing for. It was coming soon for like 3 or 4 days, so we knew it was coming up. Let's say it was Thursday. We've got a showing for Thursday morning, and we have as a realtor in our system, we have a showing time app that you have blocks that you say I'm going to get this hour, I get this hour, and if you look at it, they were. Either opened on a Wednesday or Thursday, and they were showing through Sunday night. Offers were due Sunday night. And the day it opened, Wednesday morning or Thursday morning through Sunday, there was not an open block. It was being shown the entire time. So we showed up day one, first thing in the morning. There were 5 other showings. It was like an open. My client said, "Is this an open house?" And I was like, "No, this is all the showings." It was just nonstop, just a revolving door of people. We ended up writing an offer. We were one of 21 offers, which is the most I've ever been a part of.
That is insane.
21 offers.
Do you and the other realtors just go get coffee and like, look, okay, let's work this out? Like, come on.
No, man,
like,
it's competition.
Blake's got it. Let's save us all a lot of time here.
It's competition. It is, I want my people to get it.
21
offers. So it's listed at 660. Obviously, we know we've got to offer more than that. And so and it's not just about the number, but it's about the terms of the contract as well. What else is in the contract that is risk to the seller of it not closing? And that is in reference to the contingencies. So contingent on inspection, contingent on financing, anything else. You just can't have contingencies if you want to compete with that. Mm-hmm. And so my buyers decided to pay for an inspection day 2. Before offers were due, we're going to pay an inspector to go in there. We may not get the house, but we're going to spend the money because we want to make sure we're going to spend a lot of money. We want to make sure we're not buying a dud.
Sure.
But we know if we put an inspection contingency in this offer, we're not going to get it. Mm. So they decided to spend the money. The house came back pretty good. There's a couple little things, but nothing crazy. And so we check that box. We don't have to make contingent on inspection. The next one is contingent on financing, where they were getting it financed. They had a decent down payment. And so 2 things. One, he was confident he's going to be able to get the financing. He's not going to lose his job, and the bank says, we're not going to loan to you, or you're not going to go finance a yacht or a Lamborghini, right? Like you're going to be in good standing, and that was a calculated risk that the buyers made of saying, yes, I'm confident that I'm going to get the financing. So we checked that box of not contingent on financing. The second part of that box is appraisal, which was the risk for him was, hey, we're gonna offer over list price. What could it appraise for? Because let's say we offer $700 and it appraises for $660, then that $40,000 gap
has to come out of his pocket.
Coming out of his pocket. Right. Now, I told you they're putting a significant down payment down, and so it was significant enough that would cover that gap already. And so they kind of removed the risk for them to do that. So again, it's calculated and knowing
just a bigger risk of a huge down payment. Yeah. Well, I guess that's not a risk.
Well, they're doing it anyways.
Buy the home. Yeah.
So so then the question comes in: is this a short-term home for you or a long-term home? Because if it's short-term, it's getting appraised, and per the appraiser, you're overpaying for the house because the appraiser said it's worth less than what you're contracted for. If it's a long-term house for you, then are you okay with that, knowing that if you're going to be here 15 years, it'll appreciate, and if you overpay by $40,000, then
you may get that back.
Yeah, you'll probably get that back. Now, if this is a 2-year house for you, there's a good chance you don't.
Yeah.
And if you plan on selling this in 2 to 3 years,
you're going to lose
money. You're going to make my job really hard because I'm going to have to tell you you're going to lose money. So I'm telling you that now, assuming that you're going to call me when you're ready to sell it. And so that's where that question and the answer of that question really comes. It's pretty important.
Yeah.
Because it's so they ended up offering $800 for the house. So $140,000 over list price.
Wow.
Which is, again, think about that, and the answer to that question is it's a long-term house for them. If it was a short-term house,
that's not a very good investment then.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, please don't do that.
Don't do
like,
this.
That's a really bad idea.
But if it's a condo or something, yeah.
Yeah, but if it's a long-term house, it's okay from the appraised value, and I'm not saying I don't even know what it would appraise for because it didn't. I ran the numbers as if I was an appraiser, and I came up with about $800. I think the house was underpriced.
Okay.
And so offering $140 over sounds ridiculous, but realistically, the house probably should have been listed at like $775. Mm-hmm. But so we talked about, okay, and again, 10 appraisers would have 10 different values on the house. 10 agents would tell you it's worth 10 different things. Like, there is no exact number. So we came up with a ballpark of like, 780 to 830 is probably that range of value. And so coming up with that 800 is like, there is some risk that it could appraise lower. You've got to cover that. I think your down payment's significant enough to where you're going to be able to cover it. So as long as you're comfortable, quote unquote, overpaying based off what the appraiser values the house at, we should be okay. And again, that's a calculated risk that they had to make. I'm not making that decision for them. That's a big deal.
Sure.
So 21 offers later, we did not get it. 140,000 over list price, no contingencies, as is, take it and close whenever the seller wants to. Didn't get it. There was a higher offer, a better deal out there. So that's a record for me in writing offers. But I think that speaks to just where we're at in the industry again. Like we're right back where we were last year.
This was a recent.
This was last week.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about like in the height of like
this
last week. This happened.
Last week.
So we're seeing. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. 1st of April.
That's crazy, man.
Yep. So we're back. We're back to
back
the crazy
in
times.
the madness of the real estate world, which I guess makes it exciting. You know, that's cool.
It does. You know, I guess it
could be a little stressful.
It's exciting for sellers for sure, but when you're a buyer, like that buyer, that's hard.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of emotion that goes into that. It's not
and
just
the inspections they paid for. Which,
yeah,
I mean, that's a drop in the bucket, I guess. But still,
when you look at the big picture, it is. But it's still money, right? It's still a couple $100 out of your pocket.
Money, emotions.
A lot of emotions, and that's really, I think, the hardest pill to swallow for a lot of buyers. You know, and me going through that with them.
Making that phone call. Hey, man, you sitting down?
Yeah, it's not fun to make, and so I pair it with just screenshotting the answer from the agent, and just say like, here's what we got back. Like it's and this isn't fun, but it's, you know, back to the grind. Yeah. And the conversation is, when we came up with the 800 number, is if it sells for 801, no problems, because it's not worth 801 to you. It's worth 800. So we're giving our highest and best offer. And if it sells for a penny more, we're comfortable with that, because it's not worth that to us. And that's how we come up with that high number, because especially if we're above the list price or what we perceive as the appraised valuation of the home, it's like, okay, well, if we're going above and beyond what the market says the home is worth, then what is it worth to you emotionally?
Yeah, and then maybe it starts to become more of a not the wisest investment. So maybe it's a good thing, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, scheme of things,
you know, maybe they could have got the house for $875, but is that the best decision for them? And they decided no.
Yeah, to me, it's probably good, you know. And I go back to like watching, you know, the house flipping shows where they're like, what's your max all-in budget? And you do get these people with the emotions and stuff. And I don't know how much of it's just Hollywood and TV, but you know, they're willing to fudge that line. It's just another 10 grand, 15 grand. And I'm like, bro, you're already at like this extraordinary number. And, you know, based on, they go into the profiles of the buyers and what they do for a living. And I'm like, how are they purchasing this house?
Kindergarten teacher and
then they're going to go up another, wife collects rubber bands. You know, so
it's very real. But you know, kind of transitioning that into the relationship side of the business, which I think is just so important, is having a relationship and a reputation with other agents inside the industry is just so important on how you're perceived, even in multiple offer situations. And I've been a part of that on both sides as a listing and buyer and selling agent. Is, you know, if I've got 5 offers and I know one agent, I've worked with one agent 10 times more than I've worked with the other 4, and let's say all the offers are the same, they're all
obviously the same. It's like, okay, I know if we go with Joe, Joe's going to close. We're going to get this across the finish line.
Yeah, and a lot of that's out of Joe's control as far as like the financing of the buyer. But as an agent, there's a lot of homework and due diligence we can do to quote unquote vet your buyer or prep your buyer for a purchase. And so I know that Joe has done those things because I've worked with him and I've seen him do it. So I know that the risk to my seller, which I believe as a listing agent, my job is to remove as much risk to my seller as possible. The risk to my seller is lower because Joe has proven himself in 5 other transactions on how he runs his business and how he treats his clients. Yeah. So I think having that relationship and that reputation inside the business is super important, and how you run your business.
During the recession that set us back, that we still haven't recovered from a decade ago, that banks weren't lending. Yeah. That was one of the things you said. And I can understand building relationships with realtors, talking with Thad, how we build relationships with potential clients and getting your name out there. How do you build relationships with financial institutions like banks? Yeah. What does that look like?
Yeah. I think it's super important. And that kind of gets into, the mortgage side and the investing side. So, you know, we had Travis here at Mortgage Bank, and I've had a lot of clients use Mortgage Bank, and the relationship I've got with them is much better than if a client calls up Rocket Mortgage. Right. Okay. Rocket Mortgage.
You deal with Rocket Mortgage much?
I try to as little as possible.
As little as possible.
As little as possible. Because they have, I won't go.
That's a whole nother thing, but I'm always curious. I see all these online press a button and get approved.
Yeah.
And I always want to run these things by you. I'm like, how legit is that? Or what's
Yeah.
the catch? It just sounds too easy.
It's
But we don't have to go into that
we
right
won't
now.
we won't get into that too much. But I think the relationship like that I've got with Mortgage Bank is beneficial to a client in the sense of, so the relationship I've got with Mortgage Bank is if something during the transaction, which actually I've probably done 300 or 400 transactions with Mortgage Bank, and this has never happened.
wow.
But if it were to happen, if we're under contract, if one of my buyers is under contract and something comes up with the loan, and Travis's team comes back and says, I'm not sure we can do this, and it's not just like a hard no, but there's just something weird about it. If that was with Rocket Mortgage, as your agent, I can't help you. Like, I'm just one of 3 million agents in the country, and I mean nothing to Rocket Mortgage. So me calling them and fighting on your behalf is just like you calling them and fighting on your own behalf. But if that happens with Mortgage Bank, we've done 300 to 400 deals together. If I come in and say, I need this done, I need you to take care of this, and like, this has got to happen, you've got all that relationship and that weight and all
Travis
that
is going to go to
behind
bat
it.
for you.
Yeah. Like I know that if it's possible, they're going to get it done, which they do anyways. I've never even had to do that, but there's just you've got me who gives refers them 80 deals a year versus Rocket Mortgage. I don't even know who to call because it's someone different in the call center every single time, and so that relationship is it's invaluable as an agent working for a buyer because I can help you. So when a buyer goes out, like, yes, go shop rates, work with who you're comfortable with and that, but at the same time, or at the end of the day, if you're not going with someone that your agent has a relationship with, and this is what I tell people, is if you get in a bind, I'm less effective helping you, right? Mortgage Bank doesn't pay me to promote them. I don't get kickbacks. I think I have a T-shirt they gave me, right? And maybe that was because they did my mortgage. But I truly recommend them because, like, that is the best for you. That is again, my job is removing risk for a seller. It's the same thing for the buyer. If you use Mortgage Bank, I know I've done so many deals with them. I know how they work that I'm removing risk of the deal falling apart because of financing if you work with them. Mm-hmm. There is outside risk that I don't have knowledge of and I don't really have any control over if you go with someone that I don't know or I don't have a relationship with.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess you would advise anybody, up-and-coming realtors to probably do the same. I know we had, I forget his name. He's only been with ARC for a little while. And,
Christian Kelly or Drake.
I would imagine some of the advice you gave him was, hey, let's go get you established. Let's let you meet Travis, or maybe another bank institution, and start building that relationship as a realtor, so that you have somebody that you can work with, or have somebody that can go work for your clients. Maybe a little harder than some national outfit.
Yeah, super important. And at the end of the day, and this is again, like, obviously this is a huge purchase. Finances are a big part of it. So people come in and say, well, I got a quote that's better over here. I say, well, if that's true, send it over to Travis, let him look at it, or send it over to the bank that you've got a relationship with, let them look at it and see what the true difference is. Because, like, there's a lot of different ways to adjust and hide and change costs inside a loan, like a lot of different levers to pull. And so,
this loan looks better, but actually it's a much worse deal.
Or it's the exact same, and it's just presented differently to where on the front end it'll hook you in and it'll secure your business, which is so I think it's important for you just to have all the knowledge, and this is what I try to do is, like, hey, before we make a decision, let's just get all the data possible. And if the decision makes sense to go one direction versus another, let's do it. But before we make that decision, let's just get all the data.
Yeah.
So,
cool. Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah. So relationships are important, obviously.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Yeah.
Talk about relationships on the investing side as well. I think with banks are equally as important.
Sure.
So as an investor, I want the best deal. And a lot of times not a lot of times, but having a relationship with a loan officer at a bank is super important for ease of deal and be able to lock some deals in. So if there's a house on the market that I want to buy to flip, for example, and there's 5 other offers, and speed is priority for the seller and the listing agent, then I've got a relationship with a bank that I've used 10, 15 deals with. I know the loan officer for like 10 years now. we've got a relationship. So I can call him up and say, hey, here's the address, here's the deal, here's my scope of work. Like, am I good for $250,000? He goes, yeah, dude, you're good. Here's a letter. Boom. Like within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But if I call up someone I don't
XYZ,
know,
yeah.
they're like, well, yeah, send me 2 years of your tax returns and this and this.
A whole
and
lot
this.
of red tape that's already been taken care of. That
Yeah. And by the time
streamlining it.
yeah, by the time that guy gives me the green light, the deal's gone.
Yeah.
And so having that but that new guy might have been a half a point cheaper. Well, he's half a point cheaper on something I don't get anyways. So I think having that relationship is super important, just so you build that up and you have
more opportunity or more leverage or
you
more,
do, yeah.
you know,
'Cause,
time
like,
sensitive. You can move on things quicker.
Because I'll call him. I mean, I've always got opportunities, and my head's always going on what ventures I can get into.
Yeah.
I called him last week on, hey, I found some land, and what if we built a laundromat on it? And how cool would that be? It'd be $900,000 build out and all this stuff. It'd be $1.5 million deal. And he's like, yeah, I like it. Here's what we would do on the financing. Just let me know if you get it. Like, I don't have $1.5 million, and I probably shouldn't be approved for $1.5 million. I don't know. That's his job to figure that out. But he knows how we run our business and how we underwrite things ourselves. And so we have that relationship, and he's seen how we operate on deals. And so he knows, hey, if it passes, obviously they're still going to look at the deal and make sure it works. But me as a borrower, there's no questions because he knows how our business is set up.
Okay.
So they're going to underwrite the deal and make sure like it works on their financing side.
Yeah.
But there's no question on how we operate, and it's because we have that relationship.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah. It's good to have relationships, I guess.
Yeah.
And that was cool to understand, like, having a relationship with a financial institution, something like that, versus just personal relationships and relationships with individuals. But yeah, I think you answered that question well. So
Yeah.
cool.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I probably, I don't know if I'm an outsider like this, but like the relationships with those guys is everything's a personal relationship for me. It's not, a lot of people have like, this is a business relationship, and it's not. It's, man, we're friends. I want to do people that I enjoy working with and hanging out with. And, me and him go golf together, and we enjoy being around each other. It's not, I don't know. It's not as much just a business relationship as it is like we're hanging. Actually, I just sold him a house in Bluff Park.
Okay.
So,
yeah. Well, I would like to think this is not our business relationship anymore. Like, we've kind of become friends.
Even though we've never actually mountain biked together, we talk about it.
We talk about it all the time. We talk about investing and buying and stuff together, which we'll eventually do.
Yeah,
yeah. I get that totally. Well, cool, man. Great to have you back in and to talk and catch up. And good luck this spring. I'm sure we'll check back in and see how things are going. And didn't realize, I thought things were going to ramp back up from what I've learned talking to you. Did not realize things have already gone really crazy so far.
Hold on tight. This spring is going to be crazy. We're going to be right back where we were last year.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about that. But yeah, man.